Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the virtual family Shabbaton. This is our second evening, our second night of our new and our first time in the history of Yachad, our first ever virtual family Shabbaton. My name is Rabbi Rosenthal. I'm Director of Special Initiatives at Yachad, and it is my pleasure and my honor to welcome all of you tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming out and for joining us. If you were with us last night, I welcome you back. And if you're joining us for the first time, I do welcome all of you. Last night, we had the great honor of having Charlie Harari and Dr. Eli Shapiro. And Charlie Harari gave us a bracha that we would have our virtual family Shabbaton be a real family Shabbaton next year in Jerusalem. And he said that we would have it at the Waldorf Astoria in Jerusalem. So I say amen to that. I have been getting many emails asking how people can sign up for that. So I don't have that information yet, but I do want that to happen. And I do, of course, want all of us to have only the greatest of health and greatest of bracha as hopefully we exit out of these very, very difficult times. Please join us again tomorrow for our third night of the virtual family Shabbaton, and then again Thursday night for our fourth and final night of the virtual family Shabbaton. You can find all of the information, all of the speakers, all of the contact info on our website, which is yachad.org/family Shabbaton. So this evening, we begin our program with a panel of very chashuv rabbanim who are well known to all of us and throughout the Jewish world. And it is really a great honor for us to have them and welcome them this evening. I do just want to mention that we are trying somewhat of a new platform tonight. So while this is Zoom, this is a Zoom webinar program. If there are any technical difficulties that you're having, you can certainly try to chat us on the bottom of the screen and use that option, and we'll be happy to try and answer any questions. In addition, tonight it is an open question, and we hope that we'll have questions and comments from our viewers and from our audience. So please, at any point, if you have a question, if you have a follow-up question, if you have any comments, please, again, chat us on the bottom of your screen, and we will try to get to those questions. We have received questions, and we're hoping to try to get to as many as we can this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Again, a very chashuv rabbanim who are joining us this evening. I do want to welcome Rabbi Dr. Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb, who's the Executive Vice President Emeritus of the OU, following more than 7 years as Executive Vice President at the OU. He combines his skills as a pulpit rabbi and scholar and clinical psychologist, and provides extraordinary leadership to the organization and to Orthodox Judaism worldwide. I want to welcome also Rabbi Michael Taubis, a Rosh Yeshiva at the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary, REITs of Yeshiva University, and at the Marsha Stern Talmudic Academy, as I know it is, MTA, if that's okay. He's also the Rabbi of Congregation Zichron Mordechai in Teaneck, and gives many shiurim, many classes throughout the community. Rabbi Taubis has been involved in chinuch for 25 years, and as I understand it, involved as a director at NCSY also sometime in the past. And I'd like to also welcome Rabbi Shai Schachter, who is the Rav and Rosh Beis Medrash at the Young Israel of Woodmere, overseeing its extensive adult educational programming. And he's also the rabbi and spiritual leader of Yachad, which is somewhat of a newer entry in the last year, I believe. And Rabbi Schachter has also been, since 2017, as the rabbi of Camp Simcha and Chai Lifeline's Camp for Children battling cancer and chronic illness. And I do want to point out that I do go back with Reb Shai to the days at the White Shul, which were probably almost 10 years ago. So with that, I welcome our Rabbanim, and again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm going to start with a question that I want to ask all of the Rabbanim, and I'll start with Rav Weinreb, and that is just some of your thoughts right now on what is the message that you see from the quarantine and from the COVID-19 crisis, if you will, that all of us throughout the world are experiencing. can you perhaps share, and I ask all the Rabbanim, and I'll try to go one after the other, of just some of your thoughts and insights personally and also as a whole for Klal Yisrael. What are some of those messages that you'd like to convey to us about this time period?
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Rosenthal, and hello to everyone who's watching. It's a pleasure to participate in another Yachad Shabbaton. My wife and I try to make every Shabbaton, every Yachad Shabbaton every year. I think we have an almost unbroken record for about 20 years. So I'm glad to be on this to keep my streak going. It's hard for me to see a message in what we're going through. But what I do see are so many different reactions, most of which are extremely encouraging and helpful and hopeful. First of all is the amount of chesed that we see being done. Actually, it's being done worldwide, beyond the Jewish people. But certainly we see in our own society, whether it's here in the United States or across the world, or especially in Eretz Yisrael, the chesed that's going on for people who are ill from the virus or ill from other illnesses. We see chesed for people who are jobless, for people who are experiencing great financial difficulties, for people who are experiencing psychological difficulties. Being alone, isolated this way is a very great stressor, but there's so many different organizations that are reaching out in all kinds of ways, and the OU, of course, and Yachad especially, is right up there with the prize winners of people who are, under these circumstances, really reaching out to people of all kinds, for all kinds of needs. That's the chesed. The other thing that's so encouraging is the creativity. The fact that very few people within our world have said, well, we're stuck, nothing we can do, let's just sit home and get drunk. And there are people who are doing that. But that's not been the reaction of our community at all. Just the opposite. We've used every possible creative means and really tremendous inventiveness and innovation to keep in touch, to keep programs going, to continue to raise funds, to continue to present programs such as this. The creativity is just enormous, and it's awe-inspiring. That's another aspect to it. The other aspect is, I can't say negative, but very, very difficult and painful, and that is the suffering that we see. I personally lost one of my sisters to this virus, to this pandemic, just before Pesach, on Shabbos HaGadol. She passed away, and the pain of sitting Shiva the few days between Shabbos HaGadol and Yom Tov, the pain of being alone. Only one person actually came to my door, stood 6-7 feet away from me and wished me nechama in person. But the literally hundreds of telephone calls and emails and just plain old-fashioned sympathy cards that I got in the old-fashioned snail mail were very, very comforting and very, very consoling. But the pain, of course, is still there, and there's something about not being able to connect more directly with people that makes the pain that much more difficult to bear. And that's the experience that other people who have lost close loved ones to this terrible magefa tell me about. So those are just some reactions, the subjective, personal reactions that I have to the situation that we're in.
Thank you, Rabbi Weinreb. Rabbi Taubes, your thoughts and insights into this time period that we find ourselves in now.
So, at the beginning, when it was first announced, I live in Teaneck, so in our local Vada Rabbanim decided, I think we were among the first, to decide that we better close down the shuls. It was right after Purim. I was terribly depressed initially, personally. Like many people, I don't think that I have missed the Kriyas HaTorah in Shul on Shabbos since well before my Bar Mitzvah. And I'm a little bit past my Bar Mitzvah now. And I was just, you can ask my wife, how could it be I'm not going to go to Shul? I remember that Shabbos was Parshas Parah. There were Shittas at Parshas Parah. We thought, right, we're not going to hit Parshas Parah. And I was very, very dejected. And there's a sobering message, I think, though. I shared with my shul, this again via Zoom, of course, which I'd never heard of a couple of months ago. I shared that this past Shabbos, it struck me as we finished Chumash Vayikra, that at least we in this area just completed an entire sefer of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah without hearing one Sedra lane from the Kriyas HaTorah, from the Sefer Torah. And it was sort of like, we say at the end, we say Chazak, Chazak, v'nischazek. What Chazak? We hope that it's going to happen again. We hope we don't go through all of Chumash Bamidbar without hearing the Kriyas HaTorah. We don't know. But there was kind of a sobering thought. But at the same time, it struck me that, in a certain way, that's the message, is Chazak. I feel that part of the message here, and I don't have any insight more than anybody else, is that we have to recognize that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us in situations which we didn't anticipate. It's a break in the routine. It's not what we expected. We have a routine. People who have been a Torah, who are Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, men, women, we have a routine in terms of what we do. And all of a sudden, we're now being asked to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that doesn't operate through our normal routine. And that's different for every person. Many people struggle with that. So Baruch Hashem, it's a person who's able to learn, able to daven. So we got used to davening b'yechidah. So some people daven not technically with a minyan, but on the Zoom with a group of other people from their shul and so on. There are different creative things. Rabbi Weiner mentioned the creativity that we came up with. But the point is we have to strive to be mechazik ourselves to find ways to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a manner that we weren't expecting, that kind of breaks our routine. And in a certain way, it seems to me that strengthens. We went through Sefer Vayikra, but you know what? We read the Sedra each week, or we talked about it at our tables and so on. We connected HaKadosh Baruch Hu differently. Throughout Jewish history, actually, many of our ancestors suddenly had to leave their homes and leave their communities at the drop of a hat because of this pogrom or that edict, and rebuild their lives somewhere else, unexpected, unanticipated, and so on. But you still have to find a way to connect our HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand he has a plan. And if I could just add something as a parent of a special needs child, a special needs young man, an active Yachad participant, Baruch Hashem, myself, obviously, like many of the parents who are probably tuned in over here, when we got the news and we understood that our child is on the autistic spectrum, and we didn't really understand fully what that means, and just as, I guess, when we announced the closing of the shuls, we had no idea what that really was going to mean and how we were going to adjust and what we were going to do. And at the same kind of, confusion, so to speak, or lack of routine, we have other children. We have older, he's our youngest child. Baruch Hashem, our other children are all healthy, and we expected this baby was going to be just the same as all our other babies. And all of a sudden, after a couple of years, we realized that things weren't the same. And we have had to work, like any parent of any special needs child, to work within that reality and to make the best of the strongest connection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu through that reality. So now we're in a situation in the world, the pandemic, Jews all over the place have to figure out how to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the reality which he has presented before us, and that's what we have to learn to live with. We have to mechazik ourselves, and it's not easy. It's not easy. I have to be honest. Now, Baruch Hashem, I've not lost any relatives to COVID, but during the after the pandemic began and we closed down the shuls, it happened to be the first yahrzeit at the end of the year, a little more than the end of the year, because a leap year last year, the first yahrzeit after my father, Olav Shalom, and I wasn't able to say Kaddish on his first yahrzeit. So that was painful. I couldn't say Kaddish the first yahrzeit. Okay, so I did something else. We had to see him and gave a shir, whatever it may be. Different people are able to do that. Other people have to find other ways. We have to mechazik ourselves, and I think that's a message, and especially parents, again, with special needs children, we always dealt with things that we didn't expect, so now we have to deal with this as well.
Thank you.
So the messages of the other Rabbanim are extremely inspiring, as I'm sure they were to all of you. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about over the last couple of weeks, and I guess few months, was the Gemara has an amazing story, and we're not going to get into the details of the story, but Alexander the Great, we're told, was a person who thought that he was very powerful, and he had conquered most of the world. And then the Gemara tells us that he found out there was a certain community that had very little sunlight. It seems the sun didn't rise there, and it was a very mountainous area. And he found out that he had not yet conquered this neighborhood, and that really bothered him. He felt, if I'm the one who conquers the world, I should be able to conquer that location as well. And when this happened, all of his advisors told him that they felt this was not a good idea. He should not consider going ahead with this plan, but he, in defiance, decided he was going to do it anyway. In the end, they advised him if he planned to go, he should at least leave a paper trail. So they told him he should leave little ropes along the way and cut the ropes. And then if he has to retreat, he'll be able to get back without having any issue. So the Gemara says that he went there, and then after a very short period of time, he realized there was no way he would ever be successful. And on his way back, the Gemara says, he passed by a be'er, and he was overwhelmed by a reach shel Gan Eden. He was overwhelmed by such a sense of spirituality, of beauty, and of sublime feelings. And on the occasion that I once came across this Gemara, my great teacher of Usher Weiss pointed out to me, isn't it strange, if he followed the same way back that he went down, why is it that he didn't notice the sense of Gan Eden on his way down to that city? Why did he only feel it on his way up if he took the same route back as he took there? And he suggested the difference is that on his way down, he was arrogant and he was full of pride. And it was only after he was defeated that he was able to recognize the Gan Eden that was always there all along. But it's because his perspective changed, because his attitude had changed, that he was then able to appreciate the Gan Eden that was at his feet throughout. And that's what I've thought about a lot through this pandemic, that it's made us have an opportunity to really consider what the Gan Eden moments, what the Gan Eden parts of our lives always have been that perhaps we never really have paid attention to. And things that we often overlooked, but because we are humbled in so many different ways by the tragedy, and we're humbled by the circumstances that the entire world has gone through and been enduring and experiencing, it's in some way given us an opportunity to notice those things that we've always overlooked. And when we think about it really carefully, sometimes that gives us the perspective that indeed we all have Gan Eden at our feet. Some people more, some people less, but we all have very special blessings, and we all have the opportunity now in particular to appreciate how lucky we are to have all of those.
Thank you, everyone. I want to point out that I am humbled to be moderating with such a great panelist, and I have to be honest, I haven't done a panel like this ever in my time. So certainly it's difficult to do over a virtual platform. So I'm going to try to ask questions and try to please don't hesitate, our Chashuv Rabbanim, to answer questions and to really just jump in. And again, I ask all of our participants to use the question and answer option on the bottom of the screen. I stand corrected to what I said before. The Q&A button on the bottom of your screen is where you would ask the question. So I've gotten a number of people have sent the following question. So I'm going to start with this question. And again, I don't know if this is an appropriate question to start a question and answer with, but I'll do it because it seems to be a popular question. Are we in the days and times of Mashiach right now? That is a question that we've gotten from a number of people in the last 5 minutes. Rabbi Schachter, you're in front of me, so if you'd like to begin, please.
I think the classic answer that any responsible rabbi or spiritual leader would say is, Lo Navi ani velo ben Navi ani. I can say I'm certainly not a Navi. I am a ben, great person, but even the great person that I am the son of also has told me on numerous occasions that he has no idea. Personally, I feel this is a big distraction for us to be focusing on whether it is Mashiach or not Mashiach. I live in a community where our shul has over 1,000 family members, member units. And I can't tell you how many teenagers and how many adults have asked this question, have wondered about it. And I really think it's just a way of diverting their attention from what we are now experiencing and what we can learn from it. I think more important than worrying about whether or not this is Ikvasa de Mashiach or whether or not this is the coming of Mashiach, whether this is Gog Magog, whatever, however you want to formulate it, I think it's more important to try and focus on what it is that we're all experiencing in the moment and try to understand what it is that we're supposed to be taking away from it. Now, for every family and every individual, that can mean something different. Many families in our neighborhood call me up and say, I can't imagine what it's like to have young children at home. You know, my kids are teenagers. To be honest, I can't imagine what it's like to have 5 teenagers at home right now with nothing to do and school not the way it should be. I don't know what that challenge feels like. I also don't know what it feels like to be a senior citizen who's all alone, whose children are unable to visit them. I think every family has their own challenges, and especially a family that has a special needs individual as part of that family unit is also an exponential challenge to what many other families are going through. But I think that is the point, that every family has the opportunity to focus on what their family is being challenged with and what it is they're supposed to be learning from it. There's no one quick fix.
So I think that Rishach is 100% correct. I don't think any of us can or should say with any kind of certainty or even uncertainty that this is or is not the time of Mashiach. Obviously, in a certain sense, yeah, it certainly is the time of Mashiach because we believe B'chol Yom She'yovo, right? That we understand that the Gemara says, Hayom im B'chol Sishmo. You know, Mashiach can come today, can come tomorrow, can come. Well, the discussion, what about on Shabbos? But leaving that out, Mashiach can come at any time. So, of course, we always believe that Mashiach can come at any time. It's got nothing to do with the coronavirus or not with the coronavirus. So we have Emunah, and one of the Ikari Emunah is to believe B'vias HaMashiach. And again, it's not just to believe, but believe it could be come at any time. That's how the Brisker Rav and others explain it. And but to say that because we're undergoing this unusual change, I mean, again, this has happened, I said before, there have been many events in Jewish history where Jews experienced upheaval and people thought it was the time of the Mashiach after this pogrom or that disaster, with, unfortunately, sometimes disastrous results. Because people were so convinced that, oh, this must be Ikbis of Mashiach, it must be that was Muhammad's Gog and Magog, this is going to bring Mashiach. And then when it didn't happen, it led to, again, it's not a history lesson here, but people who know Jewish history know that that kind of belief can lead to such depression and such dejection if it doesn't come out that way, that it's a mistake, as Rabbi Shachta said correctly, to focus on that and to think about that. We hope it's at the time of the Mashiach. Again, you know, my son Yosef, I'm speaking because part of my role in this panel is as a parent of a special needs child. So he really has a belief in the coming Mashiach like many people don't have. He's very excited. People have heard me speak before at Yachad Shabbatonim. You know, he's very excited always with Kiddush Levana. Every time we have Kiddush Levana, he's very excited about it. And what is he excited about it? Because somehow he learned. And I don't know how he knew it. And when I spoke to the people in the yeshiva, I asked them, why did you teach them about Kiddush Levana? Of all things, they said to me, oh, we thought you taught him about it. So I'm not really sure, you know, how, but he's very excited and he connects it to the coming of Mashiach and David Melech Yisrael and so on and so forth. And he says, oh, we're going to do Kiddush Levana, Mashiach's going to come. He believes it. You know, that's the way we should all believe. But other than that, other than that concept, to think that now because we have this suffering, this worldwide suffering, and people found all kinds of remuzim and all kinds of psukim and the drashos chazal that netziv that the Muhammad's Gog and Magog can be a magefa. It's interesting, but it should not distract us on a day-to-day basis. We hope it'll bring Mashiach, but to say that with any kind of definitive, any type of certainty, I think is a mistake. As Rashachta put it correctly, it's a distraction from what we should be doing.
I'd like to chime in a little different note. I mean, the answer is one of the two. Either yes, it is somehow leading to Mashiach, or Mashiach's on his way, or he's here, or it's not. The question that becomes, either way, in that mimonavshach, what does that mean for me? Suppose Mashiach is here at the doorstep. We're really very, very close. What does this mean for me? What do I have to do differently? I mean, it's Mashiach's time, so I can't be the same old. I got to do something different, and it's time for a cheshbon nefesh, time to change some things for the better. If it's not Mashiach, then we're in the same boat we've been in for a long, long time, and we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to bring Mashiach? What can we do better So if we can use this question to somehow improve ourselves, to look inwardly, to do some introspection, some cheshbon nefesh, and to improve our behavior, especially our behaviors, our interpersonal behaviors. So either way, if he's coming, he's not coming, here or not here, it can prompt to change ourselves for the better.
Thank you. Staying on this topic a little bit, and I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions that I think had the same core question to it, which is there's a lot of fear right now, both in terms of the sickness itself and fear of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety. Is that an acceptable emotion to have? Is it a lack of belief in Hashem? Or is it acceptable to be in a state of fear? Maybe to what degree one would be experiencing that during these times?
Yeah, I'd like to just give my opinion. There's no such thing as an emotion that's wrong or illegitimate. An emotion is a response of our body and our mind and our heart and our soul to something that's making us afraid, in this case, if we take that emotion. The question is, what do we do with the emotion? Do we let the emotion paralyze us? Or do we use the emotion to put us into positive action? So right now, a person feels fear. There's plenty to be afraid of. The illness is a terrible illness. Someone called it the nastiest illness he ever saw. No one really knows how to handle it, how to cure it, how to prevent it, what caused it. So much uncertainty. Uncertainty causes fear and anxiety. And then, of course, people already been hit with all sorts of problems that make one afraid. What does the future bring? The question is, what does one do to this type of fear? To feel guilty that I'm afraid, see that as lack of a bitochen, that's the fear is real. In this case, for sure. To feel the fear, and sometimes we underestimate the fear. It's both ways are wrong. We have to look squarely at the facts that are causing the fear and begin to think of what we could do more constructively. And here is where I would point to some general kinds of things that we can do. Number one, we can look more at the short term than at the long term. We can wake up every morning and say, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, today is a new day. What happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow is not my concern. My concern is, what can I do today? That approach to life helps diminish fear. Lets me look at what's in front of me now. The other thing is to begin to see, what can I do about my fears? Can I define them? Who can I speak to about these fears? What kinds of things have to change that I can control the fear? And the answers are often not simple. And perhaps in this situation, they're so new that they feel almost impossible. But the first thing to do is look at the short-term immediate. What's before me? What do I have to deal with today? And look at it as optimistically as possible. And the other thing is, of course, to begin to constructively think of things that one could do, small steps, to begin to deal with the fear. And there are many, many other approaches. But to think that, I'm a terrible person because I'm afraid, in this situation, one shouldn't punish oneself for that feeling. Hopefully we're on the madrega where our yiras shamayim is so great that all the other fears diminish. But we're not all at that level, and we shouldn't feel guilty that we feel afraid.
I think that, and again, I don't want to disagree at all. I'm not disagreeing with Weinreb, certainly with his extensive background in psychology. But I think that to some extent, people feel that fear is an unhealthy kind of reaction, and as our Weinreb said, it's natural. On the other hand, one thing that one can do is channel one's fear to a connection again to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The davening on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur as well, we add the phrase in one of the brachas towards the beginning of V'chein tein pachtecha. Hashem Elokeinu. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to instill fear. And our Salvation al-Racha explained that when people ask, why are we asking? We're asking for fear. And the Rav Rosenthal apparently said that fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is absolutely healthy. Fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something we should. So if our fear of what's being presented is a way of seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu and having awe and reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if that can be channeled in that direction, it could turn into a positive thing. But in terms of that's very difficult for many people to do. Maybe that's why we daven for that on Rosh Hashanah. It's not really easy for people to do. But I do think that one thing which I think I found, and again, I'm just drawing from experiences as both as actually as a Rav and as a special needs parent, that one way to alleviate fear or to at least minimize fear is through information, through knowledge, through understanding. Much of fear comes from fear of the unknown. What's going to be? Where's this going to take us? Again, when my wife and I first got the diagnosis of our young son, we didn't know what it meant, what it was going to be, and we were frightened, and we had hope. Oh, well, we'll do this, we'll cure him, this, that. There was fear of the unknown. We weren't going to be able to raise him the way we raised our other children. It was going to take a different kind of, lifestyle. It was going to impact our lifestyles. It still does, Baruch Hashem, more than 20 years later. And it was certainly a fear, but the more we found out about what exactly his condition is and how we can relate to it and so on, the more comfortable we were and the less, quote unquote, fear there was about what's coming up. And I think that that's true. People who are involved in the medical world, a lot of times there's a whole field of patient education. They sit and explain it doesn't take away the disease, it's not going to cure the disease, but you have a cancer patient, is frightened of what's it going to be. And if somebody can sit down and explain and give them information what to expect, again, it doesn't cure the disease, doesn't take away the problem, but it makes the person or gives the person that much more of an opportunity to cope with whatever problems are being faced. And so the same thing here. Again, our problem today is there's so much information, and half of which is nonsense and half of which is wrong. And you have, and I just yesterday showed my wife, I got something, 2 headlines in a row on a computer, a website. One said, evidence that there's coronavirus increased in the states that have opened up. And the very next headline was evidence that coronavirus did not increase. You have 2 consecutive headlines which are so, that contradict each other. So there's a lot of false information, but if we can figure out how to get people the right information and people can understand this talk, it's good to wear a mask, it's not good to wear a mask, here, all the different things that the people are relating, if we can give people understanding information and why this is good under this circumstance, that's good under that circumstance, I think fear can be overcome, or if not eliminated, but give people an opportunity to cope if they have knowledge and information. I think that's true in many areas. I think that's true here as well.
If I could just add, I don't believe that fear is something we should feel bad about. If you look in Chumash, one of the Avos HaKadoshim, Vayira Yaakov Ma'od Vayitzer Lo, Yaakov Avinu, so Rashi explains why he was afraid, but it's clear that the Avos themselves were also people who sometimes were concerned and sometimes were afraid. One of the most powerful comments that I remember from the Sefer Mesilas Yesharim, and I don't remember too many, but this one sticks out because I think the way he formulates this is very jarring, where he writes, Yesh yira v'yesh yira, yesh pachad v'yesh pachad. He said there are things that people are afraid of that are legitimate, and there are things that people are afraid of that are just in their heads. And he goes into a lengthy discussion about sometimes in life we have to say, V'nishmarta me'od l'nafsho seichem. I need to look out, I need to make sure that I advocate for myself to be as healthy and cautious as possible. And there are other times where we say people are going overboard, and he goes through a lengthy discussion as to say, when do I have a right to say that I'm having bitachon, and when do I have a right to say that this is what he refers to as hololus? It's silliness for a person to just be irresponsible and say that they're going to ignore everything and never be afraid is also not a way of life. So I just feel that people who are very concerned and are very afraid have every right to be concerned. They shouldn't feel bad about that. This is not something that is an indicator of their level of bitachon or not. I will tell you that what I find very fascinating, just very personally, is my father is turning 80 this summer. And he has been in his house. He hasn't left at all for the last 3 months. He's very, very concerned. I can tell you that in the height of the pandemic here in New York, we spent on the phone probably 4 or 5 hours a day on the phone together with medical professionals from all over the world who were calling about the most serious of shilas, literally life and death. And he has good reason to be afraid after hearing the real numbers of what's going on there and the real life scenarios. And yet, he's extremely calm. He's extremely calm. And I finally asked him, how do you remain calm after you hear all of this devastation? It's not just you hear it. You don't just read it on the news. You're hearing it firsthand from people who are living through it. And he said a vart from the Baal Shem Tov, which is very powerful. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, which the Baal Shem Tov interpreted to mean that the reason why I have a midas hahishtabus, the reason why I have the ability to remain calm is because I know in the back of my mind, in the subconscious, that Hashem lenegdi samid. Since I know in the end of the day, ultimately, that God is always there, that he's always the one who is orchestrating everything in my life, that gives me a certain ability to have a sense of hishtavus, a sense of equilibrium, a sense of calm and serenity. Even though the whole world is turning upside down, sometimes as Jews who believe, we do have the opportunity to be a little bit more calm and understanding than other communities might be able to be at this time.
Thank you. Rabbi Tabbas, asking you, but really for everybody to follow perhaps, is your thoughts on our families who have perhaps an additional challenge of having a lot of unstructured time and having a child with certain challenges. This time, many have described it as a bracha, and it's a time of family time. And there are many, especially within our network, who have described this time as being one of the most challenging times of their entire lives. So how do we keep that perspective of looking at this as a bracha while really acknowledging at a very, very simple way that this is extraordinarily difficult times to navigate?
Look, I don't think it's a non-challenging time for anybody. I think it's challenging for everybody. As Rabbi Schachter said earlier, you have people who have teenage kids. It's a challenge for them to keep them busy and indoors. You have people with little children at home who don't understand what's going on. And, it's a challenge for everybody. For people with special needs, and of course, there's a whole range of special needs. There's it's not one size fits all. The unstructured time is certainly a significant issue. On one hand, there is more family time. I think that, speaking again for myself and my wife, we have seen certain things in our son being more involved with him or having him around more, that he's home. He tunes into the Yachad programs on Zoom and so on, but he's not at the Dayab Center here in New Jersey, where he spent most of his time before the pandemic. So we see certain things, and we, Baruch Hashem, seen certain things that we, abilities that he's had, and or things that he's come to that we didn't realize necessarily. On the other hand, we see certain behaviors which maybe we overlooked before that are problematical that we do have to work on with him. So in that sense, sometimes seeing that your child, and he's not a baby, he's in his 20s, but seeing your child with whatever age with disabilities, so being around him more, or having him around the house and you're around the house and so on, can be a bracha in the sense that you can see things where you maybe can work more or be inspired more by on the positive side. There's also, again, working with special needs children. So they need structure. So sometimes you have to be creative as a parent and come up with a structure. So knowing that Yosef's not in school or in the program, so my wife ordered something, some kind of a program which you can do. It's basically reading comprehension and math and stuff that actually someone who's a teacher, an outstanding teacher, recommended. He's much older than the average person who would do such a thing, but for him it's been a wonderful thing because he can do it on his own. At the same time, we have to recognize that there are times when he's going to, quote unquote, he's going to be autistic. So he's going to run around, he's going to go outside or talk to himself and whatever else that he does. And okay, that's who he is, you have to have the attitude, I think, that, it's not a steer that something's a challenge and something's a bracha. You have to look for the bracha. You have to figure out. I mean, he's figured out, he understands, when he davens, and Baruch Hashem, he davens, 3 times a day, whatever his davening is. But, but at the end of the davening, we didn't tell him to say this, but at the end of davening, when he davens with a group that's on the screen, so they say a Shir Amalas at the end, a few of the Shir Amalas at the end, like many people are doing. So he's not so familiar with those tefillahs because it's not part of the regular routine. So he says, he asks Hashem to please take this virus away. Yes, every time he does, he says, Hashem, please take the virus away. Recently, he started to say, we still want you to take the virus away. It's getting a little impatient, I guess. We don't forget, we still want you to take the virus away. But, okay, that's, so I find that inspiring myself, I mean, we can add of, Makeno, Shir Amalas, whatever it is. But here you can, I found other occasions, Baruch Hashem, we've been inspired by him. So you have to look for the bracha. To say that it's not challenging, and of course it's challenging. It is very challenging. And again, especially with kids who need routine and need something fixed. So Baruch Hashem, going back to Rabbi Weinreib's point about the creativity that we've seen. So the programs that the Yachad has produced on Zoom are very, very helpful, and people should know. I don't know if everyone knows, but hopefully everyone does know. You can get links to programs not only in your area, but they send out a schedule. So he went to a magic show that was in Toronto and something else that was here. You can link up, and you should get on top of that. And you can also look on other websites and see. I mean, we found something where they had on YouTube things from rides at Disney World or whatever, and the trips to the zoo and to the aquarium, all kinds of things. You can give structure. It may be a little more challenging for us as parents, but that's what you have to do to give the structure. But you can find the bracha in anything. That's my opinion. Hope that addressed what they were looking for.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, and maybe it's still in this realm a little bit. Do any of the Rabbanim have any advice on how to connect with our children and build them up in the spiritual sense when they are so disconnected from their school, from their usual social lives? It's families spending a lot of time together. Is there any sort of advice that you would give parents to help build this spiritual sense of their children and really family?
I'll try to chime in. One of the things that this pandemic has given to everyone, mamish everyone, because we're all in the same boat, is that it's forced us to look at new and different ways of connecting to the Ribono Shel Olam. Let's take the example of tefillah, of davening. I don't know if I have an unbroken streak since before I was bar mitzvah, where my town was at, of hearing the Kriyas HaTorah for many, many, many years, but probably it's close to an unbroken streak. But I'm used to my avodas hatefillah as being part of a community thing. It's part of the tzibur. And now that we're forced to daven b'yechidus, where I'm at right now, it's still no shul, no minyan, even in outdoors. So I'm forced to a whole different mode of tefillah. And I find that, like everything else in life, there's a plus and a minus to it. The minus is sometimes I feel, if there was a bunch of people with me and they were all davening together, then I would get a little more turned on, Right now I just feel disconnected and tired. On the one hand. On the other hand, I find sometimes that davening alone, I daven more slowly. I have plenty of time on my hands. I look into various perushim on the Siddur or Moses Forum on Biyut Tefillah, things that I wouldn't do regularly if I was part of a tzibur. So there's advantages and disadvantages in the spiritual realm too. As far as with children, or younger people in general, or people who are one way or the other of special needs. So, there's an opportunity, no matter how isolated one is, there's an opportunity to probe the emotion. We spoke before about the emotion of fear, to probe the emotion of simcha. And what can stimulate simcha? So I advocated in an article I wrote for a magazine at the beginning of the whole virus that one of the things people could do if you're alone in the house or you're alone with your wife or you're alone with your family, to sing, to sing nigunim, to sing songs. It could be any song, but certainly if it's songs that are part of the tefillah, part of tehillim, or and the nigunim, just walking around and singing is itself, first of all, it's therapeutic, gets your mind off everything else, and it keeps you active and involved. But on the spiritual level, it allows you to probe the emotions of simcha, which is part of the Ein Hashchina Shora Ela B'toch Simcha. And we were all faced with a certain degree of atzvus, a certain degree of depression and worry and anxiety and negativity. To counteract that through active davening, etc. So that's something surely that you can involve other people within your family, young or old, challenged one way or the other. We're all challenged in some way to work on simcha. How can we do simcha? Have a little rikud in the house, a small family rikud every once in a while. End each meal after the benching, sing parts of the benching. End up with a rikud around the table. These kinds of things, it sounds gimmicky, but to some of us, but it can be a very real way of connecting to Ribono Shalom in ways that we otherwise are inhibited or bashful or feel awkward doing, that we can do in the privacy of our own home. So I can dance around the kitchen. No one's looking, no one cares. And I can feel a different type of devekus than I usually feel. Just one suggestion.
Thank you, Rabbi Weinreb. Those were such beautiful perspectives. I feel uncomfortable adding anything to it based on your expertise. I'll just say, as a father of young children, maybe just the experience is a little bit different. And for those on the call who may be sharing my experience, maybe it's a little bit similar. I found that this is a time where we're able to model for our children what an Eved Hashem actually is supposed to do. I don't find that we always have the opportunity to show our children on a day-to-day basis what it is that we're involved with and how it is that we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now my children get to see, do you actually take davening seriously? When they see you walk out in the morning to shul, they don't know how you daven in shul. They just see you run out of the house and that's the end of it. But now your children see that for a certain block of time, you're serious about your tefillah, you're serious about your avodas Hashem, and everything else that you do. I don't think my children often get to see what it means to be a Rav in a Kehillah. And now, because they're home from school and because we're with each other all day, they have a different sense of appreciation for what it is that we do as parents. And I think, number one, it keeps us in check as adults to make sure that we're doing the same and that we do it l'shem shamayim, because even when nobody else is watching, and even when we're not out in public, we have the opportunity to do it in private and to do it right. But on a secondary level, I think it gives the opportunity for our children to see up close what happens in the life of an adult on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's a very powerful lesson that our children are walking away with.
I would just add to that, I think it's extremely important to maintain, we spoke before about routine, to maintain the routine where we can maintain the routine, and not to be depressed all the time. In other words, yes, when it comes to davening, but there should be, not only for halachic reasons, but in general, there should be one particular place in the house where you daven. So I daven in the room that we're sitting in now. This is where I daven. So my son or whatever, this is where I go for davening. It's not that, well, now I'm home, so I can wander around and walk upstairs and walk downstairs and walk here, right? You create a routine within the break of the routine. And then, of course, Shabbos says the Shabbos table is the Shabbos table. We're just excited to sing Shalom Aleichem and to make Kiddush and to bench, as Rabbi Weiner said, to bench out loud or whatever we normally do, like any other Shabbos. We're home. We didn't go to shul this morning. That's okay. We still have to, we made a fuss about Lag Boma. We made a fuss about Pesach. We make a fuss about Shavuos. The same routines that we have shouldn't change those that don't have to. Obviously, leaving the house, okay, that's a problem right now. But within the home, Adarabah, as Rabbi Shach says, let the children see that despite whatever struggles we have, and our lives have been, turned upside down in some ways. In other ways, our routine in terms of davening, in terms of the things that are part of our lives as observant Jews, Adarabah, we've been more careful about it. I think that's an important point. And to the extent that you can create some substitute or something else, to recognize everybody could do this, I can do this, I'm the Rabbi of the shul. But, my wife, one of the routines we created for our son is that he goes for a walk around the area with my wife every Shabbos morning. A lot of people are walking now, so that's one part of his routine. And a number of times they walk past my shul, which is not really that close to my house, a little bit of a walk to get to. And I'm the Rabbi of the shul, so she can get into the shul. And he goes upstairs and he kisses the Sifrei Torah. Says that the first week he said hello to the Sifrei Torah. The Sifrei Torah aren't being taken out; they're sitting in the Aron, by themselves. So he opened it and says hello to the Sifrei Torah. Again, I understand that's not practical for everybody, but there's some things sometimes you can create something else, that can substitute for that routine. You can do something else and come up with something creative, even showing your children the svarim that you have in the house, or being careful at the mezuzah, whatever it may be, that you kiss the mezuzah, you show them the mezuzah, things that we don't always have time to do because of a shechta, we're always running over here in the morning, running over there in the afternoon, running to the other place in the evening. So, and everything's on the fly. There's certain things that we can set up in the home that we can call attention to that can perhaps substitute for some of the things they're not getting elsewhere.
Thank you. We could keep asking questions that are coming in, and we could spend a lot of time, and I hope that we would be able to do a follow-up session. As I started off in the beginning by saying that perhaps we'll have it in Yerushalayim next year, our family Shabbaton.
Amen.
And I hope that I hope that everybody will be in attendance and we'll be able to continue the questions. So I want to just maybe ask our last one or two questions. So one question that I think that is on everybody's mind is, do you feel that the world, and let's focus it to the Jewish world, to our communities, to our homes, when this is all over, hopefully very soon, are things going to be very different in terms of just how we act as a community, as we interact with each other? Is this something very temporary that we're going to move on from very quickly, or do you feel that this is something that's really changed our Jewish community going forward?
Okay. Sorry, Rabbi Rosenthal, I didn't hear the very last sentence that you made, but I think I have the idea of your question. What's going to be? What's the world going to look like when this is over? I'm convinced it's going to be different. I think a more helpful question is, which we can ask generally as a Klal Yisrael or as a human race or as any particular community or group, and that is, what do we need to change in the world that we now learned needs to change, right? And here we can make a long list of things. We've learned a great deal already in the however long it's been, the 9-10 weeks. We've learned a lot about human relations, about our families, about ourselves, about the rest of the world. We've learned a great deal. And we have some ideas about what needs to change. Especially in the area of Ben Adam L'Chavero, there are many things that need to change. In the area of how we go about our lives, about our appreciation for other people, there's a lot of things that have to change. And we have to ask ourselves individually and collectively, yes, the world has changed. It will change. Maybe in ways that we don't get as physically close as we used to get. There'll certainly be tremendous differences in the economy and in the financial world, etc. And hopefully shuls will change. I mean, that's one thing we can do something about. Our shuls were never perfect. Some are better than others. But now we have some idea of what shul should be. I'm sure that if you meet Hashem, if the shul's open for this Shabbos, we'll all enter the shul with a feeling of ani b'roiv chasdecha avoi vesecha, right? We'll have a real, well, how are we going to preserve that feeling? How are we going to preserve that feeling? That shouldn't just be a one-shot deal or do it for a week or two and then we go back to the normal. I don't like the phrase of, I can't wait till we get back to normal. Normal wasn't so great. I mean, there were things we could have improved that were biyadenu to prove that we have the ability to improve. So now we should have learned a lesson and do some things differently and really work on it. But yes, the world will change, but we have to have some input into how our worlds will change and change for the better. And that's where I'm banking on the chesed that's within us and on the creativity which is within us. There's tremendous opportunities. There will be soon, opportunities to really change the way things were and change things for the better and make some tough decisions because we were doing some things that were, a little over the top in some areas. I'm not saying they were also mutter, but there were things that we could have been doing better, and now let's hope we learn from it. And the main thing is, yes, it will change, but I have to have some input to that change as a Yachad and as a klal.
If I can just add on a little bit more of a positive note, I felt very much over the last few months that we've had so much more opportunity and inclusion for people who were otherwise excluded from communal venues. So for example, how many people in our shuls have participated in shiurim at nights when they are wheelchair bound, or they have some other accommodation that needs to be made, or they're afraid to go out at nights? We have many women who are afraid to go out at nights alone. They're living by themselves, and yet we have hundreds of them on our calls, on our Zoom conferences. I think on a very positive note, this is something we can take forward with us and never look back and never exclude people again. I think as much as people are in isolation, we have come up as communities with very creative solutions of how they can be a part of everything that's been going on. We've tried to think creatively of how we could engage as many people as possible, and I think those are very important shifts of our mindset that need to stick with us and that will take us forward in a very positive direction.
I would just add everything both of my distinguished co-panelists presented is 100% true. I mean, I mentioned somebody today, can you imagine what this pandemic would have been like, never mind 30 years ago, 10 years ago, where there was no Zoom and no means to people work at home and all kinds of things that made it at least somewhat manageable. I mean, it's almost mind-boggling to conceive of what would have been if we didn't have some of these opportunities like we have now. Well, that leads me to say that one of the things we have to do, and that would come out with, in addition to everything that Rabbi Weiner and Rabbi Shechter said, is to appreciate what we do have. Appreciate what we have. First of all, in a very real sense, people who have been through it and who have, Baruch Hashem, recovered, all of a sudden appreciate breathing. It's something we don't think about too often, but people who had struggled to breathe, and Baruch Hashem, I'm talking about the ones who came back, all of a sudden you appreciate your ability to breathe, okay? And the rest of us who maybe didn't undergo it ourselves should appreciate our health and appreciate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. Maybe the bracha of Asher Yotzar should be paid attention to a little bit more, that our body works properly and so on. We who are parents, especially children, have to appreciate the work of Yachad and those who are giving. And as Rabbi Shechter said, people wheelchair bound who have this issue, that the shul provides venues for them, and we have to continue. It may well be, talking about what's going to change, it may well be that even after the pandemic is over, there'll still be shurim on these kinds of forums, because for some people it's better or easier than if they come to shul. Sometimes it's better to be live, I get it, but those are things to appreciate and not to take things for granted. And perhaps also to manage with a little bit less, to learn how to manage with a little bit less. Okay, being housebound teaches us, and I'm not saying that people should never go out to eat and so on, but you know what? Maybe we can manage sometimes with a little bit less and appreciate a little bit more.
So I want to thank all of the rabbis tonight. We were hosted tonight virtually. We have participants from all across the country. We're recording this that we're going to post tomorrow, we've got many requests for this to be disseminated for those who cannot make it on different time zones. So we look forward to sharing this with everybody. And on behalf of all of Yachad, I thank you, Rabbi Weinreb, Rabbi Thomas, Rabbi Schachter, for sharing your insights tonight, for sharing your thoughts, for being open with us, and for really providing us with some very, very clear guidance and chizuk, which we all are very much in need of in these times. So I thank you all again, and I can repeat the bracha as many times as necessary, that hopefully we will do this again next year. We'll be in Yerushalayim, and we'll be able to do this and have as many hours as we need to answer the questions, which hopefully will be far fewer as we enter into those times. So again, on behalf of everyone at Yachad, I thank you all for giving up your time and for your insight tonight. I want to turn to Batya Jacob. Before I do that, I'm sorry. I also want to thank the Rabbanim for sharing their contact info, so that if there are questions that were not addressed this evening and you would like to follow up with more questions, they have very graciously shared their contact info. Please take a look on the screen and feel free to contact them. Thank you again for offering that to all of us. Okay, I turn to Batya Jacob as we begin our second session of this evening.